I wouldn't say I'm prepared for old age. I feel like I'm going to be young forever, to be honest with you.
None of us are prepared for old age. I think it gradually creeps on you.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about what I'm going to be like or what I'm going to be doing. I'm just sort of trying to, just like enjoying right now.
Definitely
No.
not. Never.
Not at
I don't want to
all.
get old.
Yes, I think I am. Yeah, because I work for the civil service, so we have quite a good pension.
I haven't thought about it much, but I do work in a hospital with a lot of older people, so I do have some idea. And the one thing I have started thinking about is making sure that the house is adapted in case I need it.
I'll be enjoying life like I am right now. I won't be taking on any extra burden or stress. I just want to mostly go, you only get one life and I just want to make the most of it.
Event, which is the first in our series, kicking off today with an event called Life Beyond 50. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Anna Dixon. I'm Chief Executive at the Centre for Ageing Better. We are going to be live streaming this morning, so also welcome those of you who are joining us remotely. And we're going to be thinking about preparing for later life, both from an individual perspective about what we need to do, the perspective of employers, and also thinking about some of the policy implications. And we've got a great panel who I will be introducing to you in a moment, who are going to each speak to us just for up to about 10 minutes. And then we're going to have, I hope, a lively debate with you here in the room. And also, if people would like to send in questions remotely, then please do that on the hashtag LifeBeyond50. So I think, as all of you know, there's actually going to be more of us living beyond 50. Indeed, there are more of us already than there have been in the past. But as the 1960s baby boom, it means that there's a lot more people over 50 than ever before. And also, most of us are going to live quite a lot of life beyond 50. Because life expectancy is and has been rising for most of us. And I think it's now the commonest age of death is nearly 90. So, this is a significant portion of our life for a significant number of people. And this age shift that's coming, I think there's a real sense that we haven't quite woken up to it yet, have we? So, ideally, 20 years ago, we should have been tackling climate change, and it feels like only now, finally, it's sort of there on the top of the political agenda being tackled. And we need to make sure that we wake up to this seismic demographic change that is approaching before it's too late, because like with climate change, the earlier we act, the better. And that's really why we are and have published our asks of the next government, and you can find that on our website if you're interested. And in there, as well as some very specific policy recommendations on areas like housing, employment, health and communities, we also are arguing that ageing needs to be at the heart of every policy in a truly sort of cross-government approach. We're also saying that ageing needs to be reframed into something that's seen more positively, and something that can be, maybe it isn't always at the moment, positive for individuals and for us as a whole society. But to do that, we do need to support and empower individuals to make positive choices, as well as changing the structures of society. And so that's the sort of themes really for today. What might we do as individuals, but also what needs to change in society? And at the Centre for Ageing Better, we are focused on trying to make changes in society that will make a difference to people approaching later life. Broadly, we talk about people in their 50s and 60s. And in some ways, it's a sort of new life stage. I mean, you could just call it the new middle age. If we're all going to live to 100, then maybe 50's, new middle age. But it's really important that we do think about what we can do preventatively during that life stage, so that more people have a chance of a good later life. And that's what we're all about at the Centre for Ageing Better. So I'm really looking forward to the discussions today. And I'd like to introduce the first of our panellists, that is Jane Portas. And if I just get my notes, I can do proper introduction. Jane is partner at PwC. She's also co-founder of Ensuring Women's Future, and this is a volunteer programme that she's established to improve women's financial resilience. And she's going to talk about the life journey that women, and we actually do have today an all-women panel, and I apologise in advance because I'm the first one when I see an all-male panel to be jumping on Twitter and criticising the organisers for the lack of diversity. So, but anyway, I'm really pleased that we've got Jane here to give us this perspective about financial resilience for women. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you for inviting me here today. As Anna mentioned, this programme is called Ensuring Women's Futures, but actually what we're really looking at is financial risks in life and the differences between men and women and how our life journeys impact our financial resilience during working life, but also into retirement. So what I'm going to share with you today is some of the insights from the research that I've done that underpins this programme, and really putting that into a financial life journey, and then contemplating what that means for us as we reach the over 50. I'm then going to be talking through some of the interventions we can make to improve our financial futures. So if as part of the research, basically I did a risk assessment on men and women's lives, and I identified that there are 12 key financial risks facing women, and I think many of these are faced by men through the life course. And I called these perils and pitfalls. And what I was able to see in these perils and pitfalls is a number of patterns around how they accumulate into a later life resilience and a pension deficit in particular for women, which then leads to a longevity trap in later life. Now, Anna mentioned our increasing life expectancy, but actually our increasing dependency rate as well, where women are more predominant. So if I share with you the financial life journey, what we see is that the gender pay gap is very prevalent in this financial life journey, and that we see it actually starts at school, and we see that young girls are qualifying in subjects which are leading to lower paid jobs, and this is leading many women to fall outside of automatic enrolment pensions. So 75% of people falling outside of automatic enrolment pensions are women. If we then move on and we look at the gender pay gap in work, what we can see is that this is actually causing some quite significant resilience issues for women during working life. And then if we move on and we think about relationships, what we see is there's now a trend for cohabitation. But many of us don't realise that cohabitation has different financial rights, and that is leading to some quite significant impacts when people separate, and pensions wealth. And then when we move on and we think about having babies, social attitude has changed a lot over the last few years. And now our social attitude is that women should work part-time after having children. And what people don't necessarily realise is that actually causes the gender pay gap to double. And alongside that causes quite a significant impact to pensions. Now, I realise this is a bit of a rocky risks in life, and we move on now to relationships. And the 40s is when many of us, at the average age for divorce, but actually that's increasing. But at this time, what we see is that many people haven't discussed and aren't discussing pensions and aren't entering into pension sharing orders. And yet the pension ratio men to women, married men to married women, is 1:5 today. And that's leading to quite a lot of impacts, both in terms of later life preparedness for people who are divorced, and particularly women who are divorced, but also resilience during life. And we get to 65, or maybe 66 now, and what we see by then is that this combination of gender pay gap, caring, flexible working or part-time working is leading to a significant earnings gap, which is then leading to a significant pensions gap. So with the average woman today at 65 across the UK, taking into account defined benefit, defined contribution, and also those people with no pension wealth, is just on average £36,000, so 1/5 of the average man's. And what that means for us all is that is a challenge for us all. It's not just a challenge for women, it's a challenge for us all because of our ageing population. And if I can move on and share with you what that means for the over 50s. There are a number of trends that are emerging. So what we see, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is that we're all sort of working longer, working more. And actually we see also some pretty significant gaps in the 50s between men and women in relation to pensions. At the same time, what we see is that people are having babies later, many women having babies in their 40s, and that means we're caring more into our 50s, both for children and for adults. And this really is leading to some significant issues around resilience, but also we're not necessarily at that point, although we're caring, we're not necessarily thinking about actually being cared for ourselves. Now, I mentioned divorce. The age where divorce is rising, the only generation where divorce is rising, actually, is in what I call the silver splitters, the over 50s. But what we see is that there was a recent review done by the Pensions Advisory Group of 80% of the divorces that were reviewed had pensions, but only 18% were subject to a pension sharing order. And that's quite challenging, entering later life without a pension sharing order in the 50s. At the same time, what we see is a number of challenges of working later, the menopause being a key one for women, but also the retirement age with the rise in state pension age. And all of this is coming together at the same time as we've got the pension freedoms, which obviously creates significant flexibility, but also a number of exposures, particularly where there are dependencies between partners for their pensions. And moving on, what we see coming through is that as we retire, we haven't really stopped working, even though we might be working longer. We're now working more for our children and doing childcare. And this also has significant impacts on resilience. And actually many grandparents are not only doing childcare for free, but also spending money supporting grandchildren. So what this means really at the end of life is that this is longevity trap that we're facing. And again, we see an imbalance in the cost of care between men and women, largely because women are not only outliving partners, but caring for partners and then needing to then navigate sort of the cost of long-term care. And of course, that's a challenge for us into the future because of ailments such as dementia. Now, I'm conscious that I've painted quite a grim picture on the financial risks in life, but our programme's been going for 3 years and we've looked at this in great detail. And last week we launched a public manifesto for change, which I can talk a bit more about on the panel. But what I wanted to point out to you was that we've identified as part of this 6 moments that matter, where we can all make interventions, whether we're individuals, employers, whether we're policymakers, regulators, whether we're third sector organisations, where we can all make change. And I think Anna mentioned at the beginning how important it is that we think about ageing throughout our lives. And at each one of our moments that matter is building in financial wellness, the decisions that we take today that affect our financial future tomorrow, whether it's starting work, whether it's entering a relationship, whether it's having a baby. But actually, the 5th moment that matters, later life planning and entering retirement, really operates across all of those moments that matter as well. We've also published a financial wellbeing guide. It's called a female financial wellbeing guide, but actually it's equally relevant for men too, and we are encouraging the conversation. All of our recommendations that we have made as part of our manifesto, which are based around the female financial life journey, but are looking at how life is changing in the future. So all of our recommendations will support not only women, but society. And if you'd like to find out more about those, then you can go online and you can see this headline report with our core recommendations. So very happy to discuss this during the panel, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Fantastic start. Lots of food for thought, both personally and professionally there, I'm sure, for many of us. I'd like to now introduce our next speakers, who come as a double act, Karen Phillips and Gloria Flynn-Piercy, who are both from the Cheshire and Wirral Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. And I'm really delighted that they're here with us today. They've been running and continue to run a very successful later life transitions programme, which was supported both in terms of some grant funding and evaluation, and now hopefully spreading through funding from the Centre for Ageing Better and the Louise Foundation. And it's been really great to watch it grow from a sort of experiment into something much more established. So they're going to tell you much more about, I'm sure, the trust, the staff that they're supporting, and the positive impacts that it's having both on the individuals and, in some cases, on retention and succession planning for their staff. So I think, Karen, you're going to kick off.
Thank you very much for inviting us today. We are very proud to be working in partnership with the Centre for Ageing Better and Calusty Gulbenkian, and we've been working on this workshop for 3 years now, tweaking it as we go along. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of CWP and the partnership, and then my colleague Gloria will explain what actually goes on in the workshop. Going the wrong way? Right. So our workshop is called Later Life Transitions, Working Longer and Living Life to the Full. CWP's Later Life Transitions workshop hopefully provides our staff with the opportunity to reflect on their future. And this is most important because they are given 2 days out of the workplace to actually think about themselves. But what we've found is this really helps in terms of retention, and Gloria will go on to explain more about that. But this workshop gives them the opportunity to reflect on where are they going in life, what do they want to do with their later life, and do they want to retire, or do we want to keep them in the workplace? So in working with the Centre for Ageing Better, we found that this recent research that they did actually is exactly the same for staff within CWP. So 30% of those studied said they were looking forward to later life, or weren't looking forward to later life, I should say, actually. And 50% said they were worried about getting older. And that is absolutely reflected within CWP. So also, the rise in state pension age for women means that 4.9 million women aged 50 are now employed, double that of 1994. And as Jane said, this is the first generation of women that have returned to work full-time after having children and also have caring responsibilities. In CWP, we've got 4/5 of our workforce who are women, and of those women, there's 3/4 of them age over 50, so this was a real issue for us in CWP. So it is imperative that we help support these staff, and we have found that with these workshops we have some fantastic feedback. We are retaining staff, and those staff that want to work flexibly are now able to do so. So I will pass over to Gloria, who will explain how we do that.
Hi, my name's Gloria Flynn-Piercy and I also work for CWP in the Workforce Wellbeing Service and I've been sort of the project lead for the programme over the past 3 years and I'm the person who usually delivers the workshops as well. So, is that right? Yeah. So our programme, Supporting Our Older Workforce, thinking of something that Jane said earlier, it's a little bit different in the NHS that we are dealing with and supporting people who actually do have pensions. And they absolutely realise that they are in a very lucky position, a lot of them. I mean, not lucky, but obviously they've worked all their lives for this, so, you know, it is deserving, but they are in a position, a much better position than a lot of people in our country who are going to find themselves at the age of 60 plus with no other pension than waiting till 66, 67 for their state pension. So, you know, there's a lot of difficulty there. So people in the NHS do realise that they are in that position. So, as it says, our programme supporting older workforce to better manage later life transitions, work longer and live life to the full. Just picking up on something Jane said as well, what we're really focusing on in the workshops is that there is a dual responsibility here. A dual responsibility in terms of the individual looking after their own well-being and thinking about later life, but also a responsibility for the organisation. So that the organisation has a responsibility to its members of staff to make sure that as they get older, they are well cared for in the organisation. So that's the dual focus of the workshops, really. As it says, it's really needed because both men and women in their 50s and 60s are often still working as well as supporting elderly parents and helping to care for grandchildren. So what we're finding with practically all of the participants on the workshops is they're being pulled in the middle. You know, that often a lot of people we're realising have got their children still living with them while they save for mortgages and things like this, and they're also looking after elderly parents at the other end. And as it says, these dual caring roles, on top of often continuing to work full time, as Karen said earlier, often we are the first, including myself here, the first generation of women to go back to work after having children and continue to work well into their 50s and some people into their 60s. We have particular problems in the NHS as well, that there's a lot of pressure at the moment. I mean, the NHS is in the news every single day now, particularly with the election coming up. And there's massive staff shortages, which is one of the reasons our project has been, you know, really supported, is that retention is a massive issue in the NHS. If everybody over 50 left the NHS tomorrow, it would be on its knees, absolutely on its knees. So there's a real, you know, organisational gain to keeping older people, older workers in the workplace and keeping them effective and supported to do that. Okay. So, as I said, Karen and I are both working in the workforce wellbeing team. We are sort of following government guidelines and NHS guidelines in, you know, thriving in the workplace. So the programme that we deliver hopefully does that. So what we're thinking about, as I said, thinking about staff retention, succession planning, by helping staff to remain in the workplace, be effective and pass on their skills and expertise and experience. We're also looking at better managing later life transitions while continuing to work. Thinking about what Jane said earlier about financial planning, one thing that we find, or I found in delivering the workshops over the past few years, is that for a lot of NHS staff, they actually are good at financial planning. So they do know what their pension forecasts are and they do have financial planning in place. What isn't happening is all the rest of it. So they might have financial planning in place, but they're not thinking about other things. And I was just having a conversation earlier and saying that, you know, if you've been a nurse for 30 plus years, which a lot of our participants have been, then once you're not a nurse, everything about you is identified. That's your identity. And when you're not doing that anymore, what's going to be your purpose? So that's a really important issue for a lot of our workers in the workplace. So we try to help staff to engage in thinking and behaviours that support their welfare and enhance their resilience. to help them stay healthy by attending to their physical, emotional and spiritual well-being. What we often find is that because of the dual caring roles and other responsibilities our staff have, they become bottom of the pile. So they're caring for people in the workplace, either their patients or their clients. They're going home caring for other family members or friends, and they're pouring from an empty cup, basically. So what we're trying to do in the workshops really is, how do we keep my cup full too? We're helping them to prioritise relationships by staying connected and avoiding loneliness. When we talk about that in the workshops, so the majority of staff who attend are sort of 50s, early 60s. They're thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't got time to be lonely at the moment. I'm trying to keep all the balls in the air. But what we talk about, fast forward 10 years, 15 years perhaps, nobody plans to be lonely. Nobody plans to be lonely, but it creeps up. And, there is a lot of research at the moment that shows that the detrimental effect on health of loneliness is equal to cigarette smoking. So it's huge. So that is really something that we need to attend to as we get older. Another thing that we really focus on is the idea of ageism in the workplace. Obviously, age and ageism is one of the 9 protected characteristics, but it's sort of the Cinderella one at the moment. It feels like that. We wouldn't, obviously racism up there, sexism is up there, but often age isn't thought about in terms of ageism. So often this is a real new concept to a lot of the participants on these workshops. And once we start to talk about it and they become more aware of it, then they start to notice it. So my challenge to the participants really is, now you're more aware of this, don't just leave it at that, really. Make sure that, you challenge it and when ageist comments are made in your vicinity to say, actually, that's not okay. Yeah. So it really is holding on to that. So, as I said earlier, also often if you've been a nurse, a doctor or whatever, for the whole of your working life, it identifies you and you need to find a different purpose. So, what did the programme reveal to us? That there is often little thought given to transitions in later life. In general, a negative attitude prevails towards getting older. There was no real awareness of the harmful impact of ageism that could have in later life. The focus on caring for others takes its toll on those doing the caring. That was a huge one, absolutely huge. And as I said, just speaking for the NHS, that staff do some financial planning, but give little thought to other emotional aspects of later life. Many staff would better manage working longer if there was more flexibility. That was a huge one. That was the biggest single issue of feedback that was given. I don't want to stop working. I would carry on, but I need some flexibility to manage other caring responsibilities or other issues in my life. There was very little acknowledgement of the huge positive legacy staff have created during their working lives. It's really interesting. One of the exercises that we do is to look at legacy and what you would like your legacy to be. And the majority of staff on the workshops absolutely struggled with saying what their legacy would be. And when we talked about it, of all the hundreds and some, in case, thousands of people that they've supported and helped over their working lives, and they're not thinking in those terms. So a lot of it as well is about thinking about raising self-esteem for the older workforce as well. There was little recognition of how resilient staff actually are. We do run resilience workshops across our trust. But one of the things when I'm delivering those workshops, I often say is, I don't want to insult you because probably, unless you are resilient, you probably wouldn't be working for the NHS anyway. And lastly, what we're realising now and what we're hoping to move into going forward is that the course could be adapted to benefit any age group. So what we're thinking, some people who sort of slipped under the net who were, because we aim it at 50 plus, but who are younger than 50 were saying, my goodness, I could have done with this when I was 35 or when I was 40, when I was thinking about perhaps which direction do I want to go in my life or in my career. So that's something we're looking at going forward. As Karen explained we have had an independent evaluation by the University of Swansea of our programme, which was all came in with our funding from Gulbenkian Foundation and Centre for Ageing Better. And that showed that 48% of people reported that they made changes to their home or work life to improve their well-being as a direct result of attending the workshop. And also 60% said they were now better placed to accept changes in their lives. This number had increased to 70% 3 months after. Because often, I don't know about you, but often when you go on a training course, you're all geared up, aren't you, and buoyed up for a couple of days afterwards, and then life takes over again and you stop thinking about it. But what the evaluation did show was actually people were still thinking about it, so it did continue, so that was a real positive. Okay. So just some lived experience really of, just very briefly, just 3 examples of what participants said. I went home that first day and realised that I did want to retire, but there was no immediate rush. I wanted to plan it properly and be able to train up someone else to step into my shoes. Okay. So I think what the workshop has helped people do is have that 2 days of reflection time to think, actually, I know how I want it to look now. So it's just, you know, often when you're on the treadmill, you're getting up in the morning, you're going to work, and you just keep doing. You don't have time to ever stop and just think. I went straight home and talked to my husband. I needed to make sure we were on the same page as far as our future was concerned. I suppose my background in terms of my working life is as a psychotherapist, and particularly in working with adult couples. So I'm very aware of often at those transitions in life, it's when it really affects relationships, and retirement is one of them. So just a couple of minutes. Okay. And retirement is one of them. So it is about thinking about, am I on the same page as my partner? Lastly, I realised that I didn't want to retire, I just needed some flexibility to manage other caring responsibilities. Okay. So lastly, what have been the outcomes? We've initiated focus groups across the Trust to discuss how we can use the policy and translate it into practice to best support those who want to work longer. And we have also initiated a suite of wellbeing workshops to include one to support managers and their well-being, and one focusing on the importance of healthy relationships. And lastly, we were really pleased to receive a parliamentary award recently for well-being at work. And of course, that we've secured legacy funding to disseminate the workshops to other NHS trusts and social care organisations through a Train the Trainer package and the introduction of the action learning sets from the Centre for Ageing Better. So we thank them again for that. So, thank you.
So I think, as Karen and Gloria have made very clear, certainly the NHS, like many other sectors, has got a significantly ageing workforce, has issues about shortages. We hear about them in the news all the time. And so I think really positive example here of an employer who's taking the initiative to really focus on this as a positive thing, supporting people to plan and prepare, thinking about all aspects of life, the social, the emotional, and the psychological. And that was a real emphasis of these. There was a whole group of different pilots, all with this emphasis on the psychosocial. I don't know about you, but we did a bit of research to look at some employers, and it tended to be that retirement courses were sort of something people attended literally in their few weeks before they stopped. And it was all basically sit you down and talk to you about your pension. So this, I think, is just showing there's a really different model out there, and one that, at least from the evaluation, seems to be having some really positive benefits. So do go and find out more about that. Our last presenter today, I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague, Louise Ansari, who is Director of Communications and Influencing at the Centre for Ageing Better. But not only does she do that job fantastically well, she had the idea to turn our evidence that we've been gathering over the last 4 years at the Centre for Ageing Better and turn it into tips for people themselves and individuals. And earlier this autumn, she published When We're 64, a friendly and practical guide for what could be the best years of your life. I think that's from the marketing blurb. But I'll let Louise talk about some of the highlights now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Morning, everybody. Right, very good. So who feels fully prepared for their later life? Show of hands. Look at the sea of hands. 2 people. Great. 3, 4. Brilliant. So not that many people. I don't either, to be honest. So there's a lot to do. So as Anna said earlier, we are a system change organisation because we believe that the labour market, the housing market, the health system, community infrastructure all needs to be radically improved to help our ageing population age well. But we do get lots of people ringing the office, individuals ringing the office, saying, with personal inquiries, and they're often around work, so a lot of what my fellow presenters have talked about, and often around pensions, and we don't give individual advice. We signpost them to other organisations like Independent Age or Age UK. They've got helplines, they've got lots of advice. What people also said to us, though, is that there isn't a kind of way of getting all the advice in one place. So we thought we would pull together the information that we've got from the research that we've got. And also I spoke to a large range of other experts and other organisations to produce this, which is a friendly and accessible guide for what people can do themselves. Obviously, it's for people who've got enough kind of willpower or sort of personal agency to make those changes, and many people don't have the sort of means to do that either. So I have covered the themes, some of the themes that the guys have talked about, including work and money, because we think that staying in work is good for you, partly for your financial security, but also we know, as the guys from the NHS were talking about that, retirement is actually quite a difficult stage of life for some people. They're not particularly prepared for it. People can be very worried about losing their meaning and purpose, as well as the social life that work can often bring, the intellectual stimulation, in some jobs, physical activity, in some other jobs. So we know that in middle age, people should be planning potentially to work for longer. And a lot of our advice, which is aimed at employers, we've got something called the Age-Friendly 5, which Patrick Thompson here in the audience has sort of pioneered. We've tried to modify that to give advice to people to help their employers become age-friendly. So that covers areas like having a carers policy, having really good flexibility, that employers care about the health of their employees, that there is a really positive culture which rejects ageism, and that recruitment is also not ageist. So we've given tips for people in work about how to help their employers get there. So when people do stop working, a lot of people do find meaning and purpose in volunteering. There's a chapter on that. But as other members of the Transitions in Later Life group have said, that actually volunteering before you end work is a good idea. Otherwise, I think when I attended a workshop, there was this phrase that Hannah used called the grab, that you retire, it's kind of cliff edge retirement, and then the next day you're like, what shall I do? Right, I'm going to volunteer for 1,000 things, I'm going to, paint the ceiling, I'm going to wax the kitchen table 10 times, and everybody's like... so you need to have that kind of hinterland, so when you do retire, your life can still have meaning and purpose. But there are lots of other areas, including the emotional side of later life, and obviously that we need to think about. So as well as financial security, people talk about wanting to have good health. That's really fundamental. That's kind of underpinning pretty much to all the other areas. And everybody knows that preparing for later life means, in terms of health, means eating healthily, being at a good weight, drinking less alcohol, not smoking, doing more physical activity, taking measures to protect your mental health. And in middle age, all these things become way more important. And there are some elements of physical activity that people don't know too much about, that we've done a fair amount of work on, like strength and balance, that will really mean that in your much later years, you'll be able to do those activities of daily living and be mobile and be independent. So one of the things you could do, for example, to get into the habit of more strength and balance is to stand on one leg whilst brushing your teeth every day. So those kinds of small habits and sort of habitualising yourself to act a bit differently in kind of middle age and later life could make all the difference. There's a lot we can also do in terms of planning for our housing as well in later life. How are we going to adapt our homes? Where do we want to live? People rarely think through the choices that they have here. Are you going to move in middle age? Are you going to adapt the house you've got for your later life? Or are you thinking about potentially very different kinds of living arrangements, of which there are many, things like the Shared Lives Plus scheme. And there are also choices to make about where in the country you want to live. So we are the convener of the Age-Friendly Citizen Communities Network, for example, and people can volunteer to try and make their own community more age-friendly. And as mentioned, people in midlife often don't pay that much attention to their relationships. And when I spoke to Chris Sherwood, who was the chief executive of Relate at the time, he talked about replenishing the convoy of people accompanying you through life's journey. People will fall away from that convoy, new people will join it, at different ages, different levels of importance to you, but it needs to be replenished so that by the time you get to your later life, you've got really good quality relationships of all kind. Now, one kind of drag on planning, which has got the potential to impact on all of these areas, is ageism. And as a society and as individuals, I don't think we realise quite how pervasive it is and quite how pernicious it could be. I mean, maybe we think of ageism just being like jokes, like on these sort of cards that we see in the shops here. You know, maybe we make those kinds of jokes about our family members or our friends or even ourselves. And I was on the train the other day, I was struck up a conversation with somebody, said I work for the Centre for Ageing Better, and they said, how old are you? And I said, oh, I'm 52. And she said, you don't look it. And I was like, and it's the instant reaction, isn't it, that people have. They want to, a bit scared of growing older, you know, they want to kind of reduce the age and sort of banish that fear. So we see ageism in culture, in the lack of representation, particularly of older women, in films and on TV, but in other elements of society as well. And I briefly mentioned ageism in the workplace. We carried out a survey of people. 14% of over 50s believed they'd been turned down for a job because of their age. And I think, you know, a lot of people may think, yeah, actually, I've had that experience about ageism in recruitment. So ageism can have a really deep impact. It's not just about culture or jokes. And then one of the sort of hidden aspects of ageism is ageism towards ourselves. And that leads to potentially self-limiting actions like, you know, oh, my back's gone, I should expect that at my age, I'm not going to go to the doctor and not get treated for it. So having a kind of positive and can-do attitude to growing older will make a massive difference, and this can be cultivated in midlife. And in the book, I refer to the work that Guy Robertson does on being positive and thinking differently about the ageing process, and he's actually also going to be publishing a book with Bloomsbury on that topic. And then the final chapter in the book deals with death. So still a bit of a taboo subject, but inevitable. So it is getting a bit more acceptable to talk about it. Now, we need to plan for our own inevitable passing away. But we also need to think about how we make the death of our parents and our friends a good one. And there is quite a lot to do that people don't think too much about in terms of obvious things like wills, but also powers of attorney for health and finance, which are incredibly important to sort out. So if you haven't sorted out your will or your powers of attorney, please do now. Now, obviously, there's the emotional side, clearly distressing and sad when somebody close to you dies. But the experience can also be a peaceful one. And I spoke to a woman who's a soul midwife called Felicity Warner, who helps people and their relatives in the process of dying. And she said to me, you should enjoy life absolutely to the fullest. then when death comes, it will be palatable, it will be acceptable. So in middle age, if we start thinking like that and actually living our best lives, then death for ourselves or our parents or our loved ones will be a part of life effectively. So the book is a guide, it's advice, it's written in a very accessible style. The very final point I make in the book is actually, because it's 300 pages of advice, you would have to be a superwoman to do it all. Or a Superman, obviously. And so the point is to take small steps, like saving a bit more every month into your pension, doing a little bit more exercise, and try and habitualise those small steps. Because the cumulative effect of those could make a massive difference in your later life. And the royalties for the book go to a charity that we've got close links with, North London Cares. I've kind of cantered through the themes in the book. There's a huge amount of detail there, encouraging people to take action when they're middle-aged. And I hope it will help some of the people who've bought it. But I've hopefully summarised that for you as some of the points in there today as well. Thank you.
So we now have chance for some discussion and debate. There's been so much food for thought and lots of themes for us to cover. So while you're all just sort of preparing your thoughts about what you might like to ask the panel or join in some comments, we would also encourage people who are watching remotely, if they would like to send in questions. I've got the team monitoring Twitter here and they will wave at me if some good questions come in. But I thought I might start with a question that's come in advance. I think the person might be here. Janice Humberston. Is Janice here? Yes. Do you want to ask the question yourself, or are you happy for me to pose it for you? All right, no, that's fine. So I think in particular, Jane really showed how this is a lifelong issue. So we're talking about preparing, thinking about this in midlife, and you targeted your courses at 50, and Louise has similarly been talking about midlife. But rather than just focusing on preparing for later life, the question is, do you think we should be planning much earlier, perhaps even starting in schools? So Jane, do you want to?
Well, absolutely, I do. And I think that goes back to sort of the financial life journey that I presented and the decisions that we make when we're very young around what we're going to study. And in particular, if you look at sort of how the workplace is changing and automation and the number of students studying STEM, there's a significant gender gap in particular on that. But what I would also say is it really starts even before you make your educational choices, and it's the conversations that we have at home and in society. And I guess my learnings through this whole programme is we just don't talk about money in our society. We don't talk about money and we don't talk about pensions, which is why last week we participated in the National Talk Pensions Week, and also there's Pensions Awareness Week in September. So getting everyone to talk about money and then to be passing that on to the children and getting equality in that dynamic, I think it's really important.
I'm going to ask actually that if you're going to speak from the floor, we do need to wait for the microphone, because otherwise the people who are listening won't be able to hear you. So if you'd like to come back on that, Jonathan.
Thank you. Yeah, what I was going to say is what I've noticed in my own family is that the 18-year-olds, because they've been brought up in middle-class, affluent families, they haven't got a clue about what life is like when they leave home. It just doesn't even occur to them that they are not going to be able to have the same sort of life as they've had at home once they leave. And that, I think, is fairly important as well.
So this is the other thing I think about sort of, living standards. Do we need to have there's obviously a lot of debate going on about whether the living standards of generations are going to keep up with those of previous generations. What do we, with the 100-year life, talk about this, a longer working life. How do we need to change people's expectations? Louise, I don't know if you want to come in on this.
I think one of the messages is that it's never too late, isn't it? So actually, at whatever stage you become aware of changes you need to make, then you should do that. But I think particularly on pension savings, I think Jane's absolutely right. You know, that does need, particularly for women, as you clearly laid out, that does need to start much earlier. And as the housing market has changed, and you know, a significant amount of the wealth and is locked up in land and housing that a larger number of older people have, then certainly, you know, the Resolution Foundation and others would say that that has caused intergenerational unfairness. I mean, what we would say is that there is a significant amount of inequality within generations as well. So there are a lot of poorer older people. And, you know, actually creating intergenerational tension isn't going to solve any of these issues on pensions or housing. So there is a lot that everybody can do individually, as you know, as when they're earlier, obviously, also in terms of health, and the choices you make in your sort of 20s and 30s can lead to greater resilience when you're older. But all of the things that we would say the system should do in middle age will help, for people in middle age, will help younger generations as well.
And obviously there's interest from the government just gone that in midlife MOTs, and I know sort of some private sector organisations are interested in this. Obviously you launched it very much focused on the retirement transition and as a pre-retirement course, but your thinking is obviously shifting. You're thinking it could be beneficial to do something like this with people slightly earlier. Do you want to say a bit about that?
Definitely. We had basically a 25-year-old came onto the course just to help us put posters up. So she said, could she stay for the 2 days? And she said it was absolutely invaluable to her, and could we look to make this workshop available to younger members of CWP. So we are looking at that, and we don't think it will take much tweaking to be able to look at 40s, 30s, 20s, to enable them to plan for their later life as well. And as you say, it is important to start now rather than, because I've only come to this in the past 3 years, and I know I thought, oh my goodness, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, I haven't done the other, and it is important to get there much younger. So I think Natalie coming on the course was really helpful for us.
Great. So let's open up for questions and comments from the floor. So I think we've got the mic over there, so we'll start there and then work our way around. If you could just say who you are when you introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Rebecca from the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. There was some really great insight in the presentations about the impact on individuals of having to take time away from the workforce to give care to relatives. I wondered whether people were having conversations about how they prepare for the fact that they might need care themselves in the future, and both financially thinking about how they pay for good quality care, but also to do pre-planning so that their family aren't having to make these decisions at the point of crisis.
Okay, that's great. We'll take a few questions if we may. So if the microphone could come to the lady here.
Hi, Nim Maradas. I'm a pension trustee. I was really interested to hear about the CWP programme. My world, which is financial services, there's tremendous ageism. Over 50s, your promotion prospects disappear, training prospects disappear. If there's a reorganisation, you're the first in line for redundancy. And when it comes to pre-retirement seminars, you're absolutely right. It's basically shift you off onto the pension scheme as fast as possible. So I'd be interested to hear if the centre is getting approaches from private sector companies who are beginning to get engaged with this whole area. And if not, whether and how you might be able to reach out and make some difference to those in private sector.
Okay, great. We'll take the microphone to the front row here, if we can. Green scarf. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Britt, consultant in marketing, advertising and looking at ageism, and I think I'm at the sharp end of it myself. Kind of two questions, but I suppose going back to where to start with the education, and it feels quite broad-reaching because as somebody who's in a full-time career, went part-time to look after my daughter, cared for a terminally ill partner, and now I'm a returner, it feels the connection with, and I know it's a massive cultural question, of who is the carer feels fundamental to this, because that's where it starts. So I don't know what you do in conjunction with other organisations. I know it's a massive, massive issue, but it does feel absolutely fundamental to this whole debate, because that's where it starts.
Yeah, great. So some related questions. So please pick up the themes there around caring and issues around perhaps ageism at work, and how we support people to both return to work but also plan for their own caring needs. So who wants to kick off? Jane, do you want to start?
Okay, so first of all, to the point around should we be doing this earlier? My experience of being involved in this programme and really having spoken to thousands and thousands of people in various settings is that actually we do need to start early, and I actually think the workplace is also a fantastic place to be doing that. So I'm seeing increasingly financial wellbeing and pensions wellbeing in the workplace. In my own organisation, off the back of the work that I've been doing, we've introduced the Moments That Matter framework into our employer cycle and also into our benefits cycle as well. So and engaged in pensions wellbeing and financial wellbeing. There's huge benefits for the workplace as part of that. I think the point that was raised around caring, through the research that you will see in the study, we are, and in our manifesto, we're calling for a national conversation about caring, because when I look at the data, and there's some very significant gender issues here around caring, so women are the majority of unpaid carers. They're also by far the majority of paid carers. Paid carers are by far some of the least well paid people in the UK. So you've got a cyclical issue, which is then also, when coupled with increasing longevity, dependency rates, where females are predominant, that becomes a significant resilience issue for us all. So I think caring is a theme that needs to be addressed holistically, and gender needs to be absolutely part of that conversation.
Does caring come up on your courses? Is that an issue for people?
All the time, really.
Yeah.
It's a huge issue. I would say at least 80% of the participants on the workshops are caring in some respect for other people outside the workplace. And just to say also about, the concept of ageism, ageing isn't being old. Ageing is from birth. We're getting older from birth. So I feel really strongly that what we don't want to see in ageism is that we're pitting the young against the old, that it goes across the board. Therefore, as Jane said, we do want to start early and get it into our culture that we're thinking about this.
Yeah. So Louise, in terms of employer practices, you mentioned our work on sort of age-friendly employers. Are people alive to these issues that the lady raised?
Yeah, nowhere near enough. You're absolutely right. We are calling for all employers to have a carers policy by law. There are a number of forward-thinking employers who do have that, and Carers UK runs the Great Employers for Carers network, of which we're a member, and a lot of good employers are. But it's one of the key reasons why people leave the workforce as well, isn't it? Health and caring responsibilities. So that is a really important area that needs to change. And in terms of sort of more generalised ageism across, recruitment, promotion, training, where we're one of the worst countries in the OECD nations for actually training and improving skills for people over 50, there is still a really long way to go for employers. I guess you also have to put yourself in their shoes. What's on their plate, huge demands in terms of what they need to do in terms of climate change, and to be a kind of green organisation, what they need to do for women and racial equality. But as people have said, age just seems to fall to the bottom of that, doesn't it? So the real sea change needs to happen there. We talk to employers on pretty much a daily basis, and some of them are really starting to wake up to it, but there's a long way to go.
And as an employer, has it been easy to take this to other NHS trusts to persuade them that, you know, why do this as an employer? I mean, what do you think the sort of case is for employers to do this?
I think at the moment, obviously, we are working with other NHS trusts and taking this workshop into them. And in terms of retention, it's a really important issue, because what we were finding were people were coming on our course, mainly women, and they were saying, well, we don't want to retire, but the organisation, our manager, is saying there's no other option. It's either you work full time or you go. And we took this to our trust, saying we are losing the skills and experience of all these people we've put years and years of training into. This is madness. Surely we should relook at our flexible working policy. And that's why we're developing the workshop for managers as well, because some managers had the skills, the confidence, the competence to say, yes, the organisation can cope with you working 2 days a week. Others were saying absolutely not. It says here in the policy you can't. But we're a huge organisation, so we were losing people and we had no need to. So it's been really important in terms of retention for us.
Okay, let's take another quick round of questions. Can we get the microphone there? Yeah.
Hello, good morning. My name is Rina. I'm from Haringey Reach and Connect. It's a service for over 50s doing outreach work in the community. So my question is, as we all living longer and longer, one particular cohort that is getting larger and larger is women over 50 who have never had any children. Through personal choice or circumstances, they face a particular type of existential crisis in old age. And I mean, all statistics show this cohort is becoming bigger and bigger. So there's hardly any research or data in relation to this particular group. And also what's lacking is kind of support groups for this particular cohort. So any thoughts or ideas?
Okay, great. Gentleman down here, if we can, sorry, keeping you on your toes. So yeah, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is Thomas Joseph. I'm representing Woodman's Group. My question is, are there any government initiatives to retrain the people above 50 years old? This is in reference to some of my friends who are in their 54, 56, 57, something like that. And they are healthy and well-educated, but because of the ageism, they were kicked out, I would say. I don't know, I'm using the right phrase. So they are looking for employment and no bad habits, they say drunkards, nothing, very clean people.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for some opportunity for them to retrain. Are there any policies by the government?
Okay, so something about retraining and getting back into work. Can we take a third one here and then come to Alistair? Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Johnson. I work for the commercial bit of the BBC and I lead our in-house working group on older workers. I'd like, two questions. I'd really love to know more about the details of the course, what the content of the 2 days is and whether there's anything that can be adapted that we might want to look at running internally. So we'll have a conversation about that afterwards. Another thing that we're trying to do is, it's the M word, to implement a menopause policy. And I just wondered if you had any examples of good practice.
Okay, I'm going to take a fourth because Alistair was indicating down the front here. And
thank you very much. I'm Alistair McQueen from Aviva. One comment, one question. The point about reducing the age for all ages in the workforce, I think, is valid, but I would say approach that with caution. In Aviva, we have an intervention for 45-plus-year-olds, and we've held it at that to send a message to that population that they need their own support and interventions. So don't dilute the message, maybe, by speaking to all ages as a word of caution. My question, I don't know, Louise, maybe you go first, but is the support or role of the media in this. In my engagement with the media, I'll talk about this subject and then quickly they'll shorthand it to, so you're asking people to work until they drop. Is the media on side in this debate?
Okay, so quite a range of issues there. The experience of ageing without children, how we deal with the menopause in the workplace, how we support people to retrain and re-enter, and then something about sort of the cultural sphere. So you've got the microphone. Do you want to kick off on, do you have a menopause policy?
We don't at the moment, but we are working on that. Again, this is something that's come out of the workshops. But the manager-specific workshop that we're developing as well is looking at, because again, ladies have said, I go to my 25-year-old male ward manager, he has no clue why I've not been sleeping last night, why I can't wear this sweaty uniform. So the workshop that Gloria's developed is looking at managers, how can you support your own health but also support the health of your staff and your ageing workforce as well. So that is something we are working on.
So Jane, you've looked at future trends, and obviously one of the trends is the drop in the fertility rate, fewer children and more people with no children. How is that going to impact on the sort of outcomes that you were looking at?
So you're very right in the data around this increasing trend for women to elect to remain childless, and I also see that as a wider trend in how we live, how we're forming relationships and the households that we're forming. So there are now 8 million single people households in the UK, and that number is rising. We're seeing increasing divorce in the 50s, so there's an increase in people who are sort of over 50, both men and women, who are single, as well as childless women. And that has some quite significant implications in terms of longevity risk for us, because obviously if people are retiring on a joint pension, the costs of living in a joint household are quite different. And so I think that is a whole area that's come out of our work that we really feel does need properly addressing, which is part of this proposal that we're taking forward around. It needs to be built into this whole consideration of caring and how that plays out in this changing world and changing demographic that we're living in, which is why I think one of our key learnings from this is when you're making policy, really understanding how it interconnects across the life journey and looking into the future. Just to pick up on a couple of other things on the menopause, we have just issued our own menopause policy, so I can pick up with you after that. And then the third point, just briefly on financial wellbeing, just to be very clear, the financial wellbeing that we've been doing is where we're using the Moments That Matter framework. So we're targeting people at different points during the life course. It's very difficult to run a wellbeing session, a financial wellbeing session with everybody when they're facing when they're at different stages in the life journey. So actually tailoring that's really important, I think.
Okay, Louise.
Yes, the media. Thank you, Alice. That's a gift. Question about the media to a director of communications. Great. Oh gosh, you're so right. You know, the media is, on the whole, quite ageist. I think the print media more, but certainly broadcast media, both in employment of staff as well as on screen, is pretty ageist, and particularly when you get to the kind of intersectional points. So if you're an older woman or if you're an older black woman, then you're so unlikely to feature proportionately on screen. And you might think that actually, so you get these kind of archetypes or these polarised ideas in the media, obviously, that you are either skydiving granny or you're frail and lonely and old and sitting in a chair. What about the millions of other people over 50 who are neither of those things? And even The Guardian, that you might think, OK, that's a broadsheet. I wrote a letter to them the other day because on their homepage, they had two stories pretty much side by side. One was millions more older people at risk of dying because of care crisis. And right next to it was a story about millions of older people are very rich because they've got houses and they're holding on to the land. And I was a bit like, which... it was really unbalanced. And they have got these tropes, they've got these kind of stereotypes, which will not necessarily make you feel good about growing older. And they will immediately go to things like, oh, right, you're wanting people to work till they drop, do you? Poor older people. But actually, a lot of people do want to carry on working as long as it's good work. So, yeah, they really need to change.
I might pick up the question that Thomas asked. So obviously work that we do at the Centre for Ageing Better has recognised that some of the poorest outcomes from employment support are for people over 50. And and also when people are made redundant at older ages, they're the least likely to ever return to work. So there's a real issue there. And we're working jointly with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and the Department of Work and Pensions to see if we can develop and test a new approach to employment support that recognises that something different is often needed, particularly recognising that they face different and multiple barriers potentially to getting back into work. We've heard here about things around juggling caring and perhaps having health conditions that might affect employment. But there is an issue about training as well, both on-the-job training, so we've heard about that we're not spending as much and the opportunities are not equally distributed to people at older ages. And things like the apprenticeship and there's a new national retraining scheme, I think at the moment are not really geared towards people who are perhaps at midlife wanting to retrain for another career, and we definitely need to rethink this. You know, if somebody at 50's got another 20 years of work ahead of them, we need to be investing in them to help them continue to keep up their skills and indeed potentially to retrain for other roles. So it was a really great question, and I didn't want to let the opportunity pass to say a little bit about what we're doing on that. Were there any other the issues that either of you wanted to sort of pick up, or otherwise we'll get some more questions?
Just picking up on what's been already said, but just thinking about, and I do take your point about not watering it down, I think that's really important, but I think it is a culture shift for younger people further down, and just having those conversations and just thinking about, you know, in terms of the media and you know, particularly geared and targeted towards women, is about all the anti-aging products, you know, to make us stay young. And that I think it's L'Oreal, who is a huge multi-million pound global organisation, have dropped the word anti-aging from their media products. So I think that's a step in the right direction.
Okay, great. I just want to check whether we've got some questions coming in online. So if we can get the mic over to my colleague James, and then we can pick up a couple of questions from Twitter, and then we'll get a couple more back in the room. Thank you.
Yeah, just got one question from Twitter from Northern Ahead, and they've tweeted saying, how can the workplace be used to deliver social return for communities, primarily in terms of improving healthy life expectancy and addressing inequalities?
Okay, so health in the workplace, great question. And one here in the middle. Well, we talk about physical activity.
At the end of that.
Right.
It's Rich of Astute Business Mentors. We've talked about ageism. I don't think we've really concentrated and appreciated just how pervasive it is. It's not just media, it's everywhere. And if I may give a small anecdote on that, I happily volunteer for a certain organisation that runs shelters at Christmas. Now, I happen to have a qualified current heavy goods vehicle driver's license. I happen to be also a qualified current commercial pilot. I can't drive their vehicles because I'm too old.
Okay, so yes, and I think there are also other age cut-offs that still get used in different services and different service sectors. I've also got a question that was submitted in advance from Robin Landsman, and I think Robin, I believe, is an osteopath. And so obviously working with people, treating them for musculoskeletal, and we know that that's a really key issue why people don't sustain work through to their state pension age. So what more can we be doing to keep people active and mobile, in particular the 50 plus, and do we need a more proactive and preventative strategy targeted at people in midlife? So a few different questions there. Louise, you've got the microphone. Do you want to start on that?
Yeah, so I mean, who knew that strength and balance was important here today? Another straw poll. Okay, loads of people. Okay, that's great.
We've presumably been pumping out our messages, are you?
Not a representative audience, maybe, from the general population. But we have done, we've done quite a lot, particularly working with, looking at the evidence on strength and balance, and exactly what you do need to do in midlife and later life in order to improve your strength and balance. And so, whilst there are, there are lots of kind of formal courses you can go on. Fame and Otago might mean something to some people. You can also improve your strength and balance by things like heavy gardening and DIY and carrying shopping and that kind of thing. But there are some really specific exercises that are good, and we've been working with the Chief Medical Officer to revise that advice. And so the new advice for adults and physical activity has just come out a couple of months ago, and that puts strength and balance at the top, whereas previously it was for older people, whereas previously it was aerobic activity, which is obviously also important. We would also say that strength and balance should have a good pathway for provision, so that lots of people can go on a course locally, because at the moment that's very jumbled. If you live in some areas like, I'd say Sheffield and Wigan are two good examples of where they've got really great sort of pathways for getting onto strength and balance. There are some areas where that haven't prioritised this at all. So there's an obvious link to, osteopathy and preventing musculoskeletal conditions, but activities also like Tai Chi, like tennis and jogging and Nordic walking. There's a list of some really specific things that will help, as well as those kind of informal activities.
So I know your trust is more focused on the mental health and well-being, but any thoughts about the role of employers in the workplace in terms of promoting people's both mental and physical health?
I mean, just a very small initiative that I trusted recently is just 10,000 steps, so that people aren't just sitting all day. And one initiative we've also been doing is that most people, well, we're finding a lot of people are just eating their lunch in front of their computer. So we're saying, even if you only have half an hour, at least for 10 minutes of that half an hour, make sure that you get up and walk about. So it is about staying mobile, because, excuse me, for all of us as we get older, if we lose our mobility, our life shrinks. It really, our life becomes much smaller if we're not mobile. It's massively important.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also have a fast access to an MSK service as well, so anybody who's suffering at all can refer into the MSK pathway that we have. So that helps people stay in the workplace as well. So that's free for the staff too.
I was interested actually at was at a conference recently, and they'd done some analysis looking at people's sort of physical dependency at much older ages, and looking at the gender inequality. And I guess I hadn't realised that women obviously experiencing low-level dependency for longer and earlier. And so I asked the researchers why they thought this was, and they did seem to think that actually women's sort of muscle reserve isn't as built up as men's, and so obviously that decline in muscle strength actually impacts women and their ability to do things earlier and for longer. So I thought that was quite interesting around some of the so more of us need to go out there and do our weight training and resistance training.
A link with menopause and bone density, of course.
Yeah.
As part of our workshop, we also do chair aerobics as well. So.
Great. Does anybody want to pick up the question about sort of age cut-offs for insurance products? Has this come up at all in...
I probably can't talk specifically about the issue you were talking about, because obviously it depends on you can generally buy an insurance product that covers a broad spectrum, but obviously it also comes down to cost and risk levels as well. But actually being part of this programme, obviously this programme is spearheaded by the insurance industry. It's not about selling people more insurance, it's about actually understanding people's risks in life, because actually there's a social purpose to insurance, obviously. And one of the things I think for our profession is, when you look at how life is changing in the future, not just sort of our ageing, but the way we're living, the way we're forming relationships, some of the traditions that exist today and the types of solutions that our profession sells and the services that we deliver will obviously need to adjust into the future. Household policies historically, years ago, and have been for the standard traditional family married couples, but actually we see increasingly co-living as the future, and that will obviously have implications for how we design products, and also the implications for customers when they're buying our products in terms of their life circumstances. I mean, one thing that I would point out is really, and particularly with not just with pensions, but also with domestic products, really engaging as to whether or not the products that you're buying are products that are in one name only or in joint names only. You know, we see, just thinking about pensions, I mentioned the pensions freedoms. Significant decisions are being taken now around drawing down, taking out annuities. You know, the predominant number of annuities are single life annuities. If people are not talking about that, then they're not necessarily realising some of the later life risks that might be being carried by an individual. So.
Okay, so we've probably got time for just one or two very quick questions or comments if we can. So lady at the front, and then we'll try and fit you in if we can.
My name is Jean Strauss, and I'm kind of a broken record when I come here. Prevention and preparation, it's wonderful. Hearing loss is implicated in balance problems. It's implicated in dementia. It underlies so many of the problems of aging. Are you also teaching that in your workshops? Are you calling attention to it all the time? We need to realize when we're younger what we shouldn't be doing to help our hearing, and what we should be doing to be paying attention to it all along.
Okay, so question here, and I'll just go to the guy at the back there.
Hi, Chris from Age UK. You mentioned line managers earlier, so I just wanted to pick up on that. They're often at the forefront of meeting targets, and they probably don't see that they really have a role for more what they might describe as more sort of pastoral type work. So I wonder, there's a really great HR conversation that's happening here about all the policies and everything that employers need, but how do you actually embed that with line managers in the culture of the organisation? And do you have any experience from your project in regards to that? Because it seemed like there was a mixed reception, including some quite positive feedback that you've had.
Great, we'll take one final quick question, and then I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that.
Hi, my name is Nicolette Whiteman. I'm a midlife career coach. I really liked the question from the gentleman about what are we doing about retraining, upskilling, reskilling. And I was just thinking, hang on, but we also actually try to fight ageism. But on the other hand, when you're 60, you get a free bus pass. So I was thinking all that money could also be actually spent in keeping people in work, doing different things, reskilling, upskilling. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, nice controversial question to end on there. So should we start this here? Do you want to pick up anything about the line managers?
Absolutely. We see that some managers, as I said, are very supportive and flexible and have time, where others are just inundated, basically. So we're lucky because our trust has recognised that they should be taken out of their workplace and given some chance to look at their own health and well-being whilst looking at their staff's health and well-being. And the trust mantra at the moment is about contribution, development and well-being. So well-being is coming to the forefront of everything that we're doing within CWP, which is good for us as a workforce wellbeing service. And it's well-being of your staff and yourself is being written into supervision policies and appraisal policies as well. So we're not there yet, but we are very lucky because we have been given carte blanche to kind of go ahead and do this. So yeah, watch this space.
Okay. Anybody want to pick up on this issue about hearing loss? Is that...
I totally agree. It's incredibly important. And if you look at global burden of disease, particularly for women, there are some things that on there that would surprise people that need a lot more attention, like headache is very high, and then you get hearing and sight deterioration, which absolutely impacts. So sensory impairment impacts hugely on later life, and so prevention of deterioration, particularly, is also in a strange sort of space just outside the NHS, isn't it, where it's sort of on the high street. So I know that my colleagues are sort of looking into what more we could do there.
And Does anybody, what was the final thing? Money. Could we be spending public money differently? Is bus passes the best use? I don't necessarily need you to answer that, but does anybody want to comment on sort of maybe we need to increase investment in retraining and reskilling of people over 50? Is that something that...
Certainly, one of our moments that matters is called Growing Up, Studying and Requalifying, and it was called that for a reason, because if we look at automation particularly, then we're all of us are going to need to requalify, and for young people a number of times throughout our lives. So I think actually what's really important is there's a generation of people that are facing this quite significantly, and actually there's an opportunity to then develop and then embed that more broadly, because we are going to need to embed that across the life journey. One thing I did want to pick up was what was said about on the policies and line managers. And one of the things that we've proposed as part of our manifesto is something that I call making flexible working fit for the future. Because actually what we're seeing, and there's been a lot of talk today around people doing part-time, wanting to work flexibly, particularly as they get older. And there's a lot of financial well-being aspects associated with that. Decisions you take to change your working hours can have some pretty fundamental impacts on your money and your pension. But actually moving into the future, where the future generations are not just going to be working flexibly, the whole careers are going to be flexible. And so actually we do need to embed this into working practices. We are going to be publishing some guidance on that in the next couple of weeks. But I think there's a vital role for line managers, and I think actually all that we've talked about today when we're talking about the workplace is not the responsibility of HR and heads of inclusion. It's the responsibility of the business. And certainly when I've been doing financial wellbeing in my own organisation, where we've found it's had most impact is when on our business unit days we have a session on financial wellbeing. It's mandatory. And everyone needs to be there. So it's done in business time, not in the lunch break and not after work. And I think that's really important that we really embed this into business as usual.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to ask each panellist to give a very short response to this final question, which is, we've been thinking about all aspects of preparing and planning, but if there was one thing you could change that would better support people to plan for their later life, what would it be? So one thing that you would change that would support people to plan better for later life. I'll start with Jane.
Well, I'd have to say engaging in one's financial life and talking about money and pensions.
Louise?
Do more about your health in middle age, because that's going to really determine what your later life is like in lots of ways.
Gloria?
Just recognise that there's a dual responsibility of individual and the organisation, and to flag that up early on.
Okay.
I would say we have to think about working longer and living our lives to the full.
Okay, well, I hope that you've enjoyed this morning's discussion. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here and for all those who've joined online. We'd love to hear feedback. I think there are feedback forms on your seats before you leave. This is the first in a new series, so we're very much, this is a new venue for us, so please do give us your feedback. We've got some great topics coming up, one on local leadership around ageing, which we'll be hosting with our partners in Greater Manchester, one on inequalities in ageing, and another looking at innovation. So do please sign up to hear about our future events. You can do that online or at the, I believe, in person at the registration desk. So thank you for coming, and will you please join me in thanking our speakers.